G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today we're going to be reviewing the Shuriken 250. Now, a massive, excuse me, a massive shout out to Hollybro for sponsoring this episode and sending me the Shuriken, because I am super stoked to finally get my hands on one of these. I know I've been getting a ton of comments on Reddit and on YouTube of saying, Stu, can you please review the Shuriken? So yep, it's finally here, so super stoked to finally stick it on the bench. So what we'll do, we'll stick it on the bench, we'll have a look at what comes with the kit, we'll sort of have a look at the quad itself, take it apart and have a look at what's in its internals. Then I'll talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, or some things that could possibly be improved, and we'll take it out, give it a thrashing around, and show you guys some flight footage. I've got some really cool flight footage as well. Anyway, let's stick it on the bench and get started. Right, so here it is on the bench, and usually I don't do this, but this one's a little bit special because it doesn't come in a cardboard box. It actually comes in this pretty cool sort of carry case, so that's definitely a nice little addition, and something I do want to point out, and you're going to notice straight away, and we'll talk about everything that does come with it. But Stuart, why is that antenna yellow? Well, I was actually flying this around and I lost one of the antennas, so I'm using the one from the Shuriken 180 on here, but that is why I've got a yellow antenna in here. Let's have a look at everything that comes with the kit. Alrighty, so here's everything that comes in the kit, and probably the first part I want to get out of the way is this is one of the best kits I've seen for documentation. So you've got things all about the PCB inside, your spare plates, you get some stickers, and then you also get, as well as some other stuff, a full guide on how to set it up and what does what. And this is probably something that is really lacking in some other kits. It's often very confusing trying to figure out what's going on, but this has been expertly written, and this is probably, and I'll talk about this later, the easiest quad I've ever set up to get ready and racing. So this one took about 10 minutes and this documentation was spot on. So I really like that. That was very, very helpful. But in terms of the components, what do we get? Well, we've already spoken about the antenna, so you're going to get a red one of these. You can get the quad itself. Fairly simple. You're going to get some spare props, and then you get a couple little spares here. So a spare Velcro strap, some spare screws, a little camera wire, some sticky pads, and a little antenna mount part, which is very interesting. And then you also get one of these, but I happen to break mine, so we'll talk about this as well. This is a little tool for getting the props on and off. Now, what we should probably do, I'm probably going to just talk about these couple of spares very quickly, so then once those are out of the way, we can talk about the interesting stuff and get on with the main component right here, the main culprit, when we'll talk about the quad. Right, and now what we'll do, some things are probably to get them out of the way very quickly. Look, we're not going to talk about those spares too much because they're not very exciting, but they are useful. And we don't really need to say they've got spare props. So yeah, you get some spare props, but we will talk about these props in a little bit. But the antenna is probably worth talking about. So I think this is a really high quality antenna. The reception was great when I was flying around. And something I really liked, it holds its shape fantastically. So whatever you bend it to, I don't know what they've done to this sort of thicker coaxial cable sort of here or whatever this happens to be, but it's definitely holding its shape a lot more vigorously than some of the other antennas that I have. So I think that's going to hold up great in crashes. And the other little optional before we talk about the quad is this little tool right here. So this is the Hollybro sort of, I guess, the little spanner that you put in to change the props. It sort of locks into place there so you can hold the motor still. But look at mine. I broke it. So I don't know why they make this thing out of plastic. It would be so much better if they just made this thing out of carbon fiber. That's definitely one little tip I could give the guys over there at Hollybro. Just look, it can't cost too much to make this thing out of carbon fiber, or make it a bit thicker, because I was very upset when mine broke, because look, I still can change the props, and I probably could use some pliers in the future, but if you don't have a little tool like this, it's definitely going to be a lot more tricky. Anyway, enough with those parts. Let's jump in and start looking at the quad itself. Alrighty, so straight up, let's weigh the quad, because this definitely does feel a little bit heavier, and that's probably because it's made of this thicker sort of plastic in the middle here, one sort of solid piece. So let's turn our scales on, take your bets, and let's see how much this thing weighs. Right here, so it's coming in at 463 grams. So at 463 grams, this thing is a little bit heavier probably than some of the custom racing builds that you guys are used to, but that's probably to be expected. I find a lot of the ready-to-fly kits are generally a little bit heavier anyway, because they're not shedding every single bit of weight. This thing looks like it's much more focused on durability rather than extreme performance. Alrighty, so what we'll probably do, we'll probably start at the outside and work our way in, but we should probably talk about the frame itself first. So the frame's really made up of 3 parts with a bottom little protective plate. So that is this little part right here, this little bottom tiny little plastic sort of plate. I don't know how much you can see that around here, but that little plate clips onto the bottom, and that sort of protects the PCB underneath here. And then underneath that, you've got, I guess this is where all your components are soldered into. So it is sort of one solid piece of board in here with all your components soldered into there. Then sandwiched in the middle, you have this thick sort of red piece of plastic that goes all the way around the outside. That makes for a really low profile sort of build in terms of this way, low profile quad, I should say, because it sort of comes built. And it should give it a lot of strength as well. So there's no flex in this whatsoever. It is very, very solid. And then on the top, you have what looks like a 2mm or 2.5mm. I'll have to get this out and measure it in a little bit. Solid carbon fiber unibody plate. So it should be very, very strong. And I suspect that's sort of the audience that this thing is going after, that you should be able to put this through a lot of punishment. You just want a quad that's going to work and a beginner can pick up and have a fly and not worry too much about it crashing around. So I definitely think this thing is going to hold up very, very well in crashes. On the outside, we've got some 2205, 2300 kV motors, and they're a really solid choice for spinning a 5-inch prop. I think that's in my personal opinion the best size motor for a 5-inch prop. The props they are rocking are some of these. Now these are, I don't know what brand they are. They just come like that, but they look very much like the original Dell version 1 tri-bullnose props. So they've got those on the outside, and they are 5045s, the tri-blade versions. Moving on the inside, you can't really see it here, but we'll have a look at in a little bit. But you've got some 30 amp BioHeli ESCs, and they're the Shuriken brand. And then moving towards the inside even further, we get to our FPV camera. Now the FPV camera is unfortunately just a CMOS one, so I really don't know why they haven't put in a CCD, because that would make this quad just that little bit better. I found the picture quality to be fantastic, but it was that dynamic range sometimes when you turned into the sun was a little bit difficult to deal with. Moving below there, we've got obviously our space for our antenna, and we've got a couple of different dip switches and stuff like that just here, which can change your VTX power. And then moving towards the back, this is one of the features I really, really like. So we've obviously got our Velcro, if that's for our battery straps and stuff, just here. But we have this feature now. This is a 2-panel, I guess, little display that tells you not only what band you're on, but also what channel you're on. So I found that very, very useful. So that made setting this thing up a breeze. It was probably one of the easiest quads I've ever set up. Right, so what we might do, we might take it apart and have a bit of a closer look at the internals that are inside this quad. Alrighty, now just while I've got these props off, I do want to point out 3 little things, and I've got these 3 little holes just here, 1, 2, and 3, and this is one of the reasons I really like this quad, and this is why I think a lot of people out there will be interested in getting this one. It is so simple to sort of set up. So this one right here, all you have to do, you can see you've got the holes cut into the carbon, that turns your OSD on and off. Right here, and this is probably my favorite part, in order to bind this, all you have to do is get your quad out, turn your radio on or your Tyrannus on, put it into bind mode, and simply plug this in while holding down that button, and that's going to bind it. So you don't have to take anything apart, you don't have to muck around with any wires or anything like that. It's pretty much good to go and ready to rock and roll within about, I guess, 2 minutes of plugging it in, or 2 minutes of getting it out of the box. And then right here, this was the other part I really liked. This is your little channel selector. So if you're in the field and you're flying around with some friends and one of you needs to change your VTX channels for some reason, or you're interfering with each other, it is so easy on this quad. All you have to do is simply hold it down to change the band, and it will actually tell you what band you're on over on this side, and then press it quickly or briefly to cycle through the channels on this side. So very, very cool stuff, just how you can do that all so easily from the top of the quad, because I know on a lot of my other builds, a lot of the VTX switches and things like that are hidden away, and if I want to access the bind button on the receiver, that's even more of a bit of a nightmare because it's usually enclosed in the stack. So really, really good job, Holybro, how you have that towards the back, and it's so easily accessible. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that. Alrighty, so here it is with its top off, and what we can see, we've got a few interesting things just here. So this is an XSR, so it's great that they're including that, and that is how they're getting it to the bind button. So they're running a little bit of a jumper cable from just here that goes directly to, they've modded the XSR, so that's very easy to bind. And it's probably worth noting too, if you are going to use this in the EU version, I think you have to do a bit of trickery, I think, on this receiver just here to get it to work with the EU version of the Tyrannus. But I've only got the standard version or the Australian version of my Tyrannus, so it bound perfectly within, like, I don't know, like the first time was very, very easy. Here's the ESCs I was talking about. So these are the 30 amp ESCs just here, rocking BioHeli. And you will notice throughout this build, there is tiny little bits of sand or tiny little rocks. And this thing did come in pristine condition, but I was loving it so much I was taking it out and giving it a thrashing. I actually took it on a bit of a trip away so I could fly it around, and I happened to take it to the beach, and I had an absolute blast with it. And if we look towards the front, this is where your VTX is actually right underneath here, so behind your FPV camera, just here, and it comes out. You can't really see it too much in this shot, but it is in here. And it is worth noting that these little jumpers here, that is to select your FPV or your VTX transmitter power, so it can jump between 600 if you have it on these four, and if you move it over just to this side, it will jump down to about 25. So it is really cool that they've thought about that option. What I do wish, though, was that you could, instead of having this, it was simply a little switch you could slide from left to right. I don't know why they've left it as those jumper pins. Now you do have your XT60 down here at the back, and I found that's kind of a good and a bad thing, because when this is in here, it can be a little bit close to the props. If you have any loose wires swinging one way or another, that can be a little bit concerning with that there. So you have to be very careful when you're putting your battery in, because the last thing you want to do is chop up your battery leads. But overall, if you're looking in here, everything in here has nice, shiny, clean solder joints. They look very, very strong, and looking around, it looks like somebody, whoever's been soldering this knows exactly what they're doing. So that's a really good sign. And then right in this little panel here, something that's pretty cool is you do have some options to configure your OSD. So that's with these switches just here. And you can actually access that through the top part as well. But you might need a tiny little screwdriver to get in there. So if you want to take that off, you can also do some things to the OSD with this little panel right here. Now moving forward, what we should talk about is what sort of firmware and flight controller and those sort of things, and then possibly some upgrades we could do to make this kit even better. So the first thing to talk about, its flight controller is an F3 flight controller, and that is using the SP F3 firmware for clean flight, and that's probably where I think our first part we could put in to improve this. I don't know why for such an awesome little kit, it is still using clean flight, because clean flight is a little bit behind in the times, and I've never had a quad fly better on clean flight than I have on Betaflight. So I think if they flash this thing over to Betaflight, it would fly even better. So that is probably the first suggestion I wish they would probably do over there. It just came out of the box with Betaflight on it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put this back together, and then I'll talk about some of the improvements I think we could do to make this kit even better, and then we'll take it out and show you guys some flight footage. Okay, so I've just put it back together, and this is one other thing. I just found this in the box, the little kit that it came with, and I forgot about this totally. But I really like this little sticker. Don't pair on first without connecting the antenna, because I don't know how many stories you hear about people burning out their VTX. So it's great that they sort of know that that's vital, so they've included that sticker. Rightio. But here is how I wish the kit came. So this is probably in no particular order. Let's talk about the things we could improve to make this even better. And pretty much number one, I wish it came like this. Now, Stuart, what's the difference? Well, when you get it, it's going to come with the props on, and I think that's a bit of a dangerous situation, because you're going to be doing binding, you're going to be setting up your fail-safe, and you're going to be testing it out for the first time, so you don't want anything to go wrong, and especially with the props on. And I think for the people that this is aimed at, this is pretty much aimed at people who want to get a quad. They don't know too much about it, but they know they want to get into racing. They just can pick it up and get it, you start using it, all they have to do is bind it. I definitely think to keep those things as safe as possible and minimize the injuries, I do wish that it came with the props off. So that is improvement number one. Number two, jumping forward right here, I don't know why this is a little sort of jumper pad. I would just wish that was a switch, because that's kind of annoying having to get my pliers out, put it in there and switch it over. So that is, or I actually had to get some tweezers to get these out, so that was a little bit annoying. So I do wish that this was just a switch to change your VTX power. I think that, or even a button that you could press in and out. Number three, moving forward, and that would be the FPV camera. So the FPV camera on this, look, it's not the best, it's not the worst either, but it is still a CMOS one. So I wish that's probably a big one I wish they'd do, is change that to a CCD camera, because you get a much better sort of wide dynamic range in here when you're flying around. Number four, actually, inside the firmware, just put it on Betaflight. Betaflight is the bomb. I don't know why not everybody should just be flying Betaflight anyway. I know I flash all my quads and all my boards straight to Betaflight as soon as I get it, because it makes a world of difference. You've seen in a JJ Pro review I did, the P200, where I flashed it over to Betaflight, and it was a different beast. It was so much smoother. Now this thing is very, very well tuned, and I'll show you some flight footage soon in a minute. Very, very well tuned, but for clean flight. So I definitely think it would be even better. So whoever they got to tune this on clean flight, they would be able to do a dream tune if they were using Betaflight. The third thing, you do need to set your fail safe, so be mindful of that when you're connecting it to your, I wish that had a little part here, a little warning sticker that said, remember to set your fail safe, because the last thing we want is to have this thing fly away. Number four, Actually, I don't even know what number I'm up to in improvements. I'm sure it's well past 4. But another thing I'd like to see an improvement on is this is a 250 size quad. So this thing is pretty much made for flying around and carrying a GoPro. So they really should just include the GoPro mount. I think I've seen them online for like $7 or $10 or something like that. But they should just come stock standard with that on here, ready to rock the GoPro. Don't worry about this thing anymore. Just pretty much stick the GoPro carrier on there so I can hook up a GoPro straight away, because this thing, for the 5-inch props that it's spinning, has more than enough power to be carrying that extra weight around of a GoPro. Now, we already spoke about the prop tool, and I do wish that that one would come in carbon fiber. And then I guess the last thing that I wish they would improve on here is put some LEDs in here, because I know when I'm flying around, I love chasing my mates when they've got their mini quads, and it's so much more fun when you've got LEDs, at least LEDs in the back. So you've got plenty of room across here, and I'm sure the engineers or the designers over at Holybro could work that into it. So hopefully in some next revisions that might come out. But I really wish there were some LEDs, some big bright LEDs in the back that people could chase. If they were configurable, that would be even better. So you could just, because everything's so easy to set up on here, you can just press the button and pick what color LED you want. That would be fantastic. But with all that said and done, it is still a fantastic little quad, and probably its biggest strength, and I know I mentioned this before and I keep mentioning it, but it is definitely just being able to pick it up. I've built like 30 plus quads in my career, in my experience with quads, and I've never been able to get something working so easily as I have with this. Just pushing those buttons, it was bound straight away, press the channels, it was ready to rock and roll. So I absolutely love that, and I think that's probably this quad's biggest selling point. So with all that said and done, let's take it out, and I've got some pretty cool flight footage. I took this thing to the beach, so it was hectic windy there, so it is going to be a little bit more jumpy than usual, and you'll probably be able to hear the wind in the video. But I'm going to roll some flight footage and we'll talk about its flight characteristics. Radio, so here it is at the beach, and here's Charlie. He was very excited to get it set to throw a stick so it'd sort of go away so I could then take off. But it is really, really windy here, so there was some massive gusts. Actually, it was a little bit sketchy at times, and you can see it's sort of struggling a little bit going into the wind, but when I turn around, you'll see it still has plenty of power. When I give it some, you can definitely see, I think it's just here, I sort of punch it a little bit, yeah, much quicker in going with the wind right there. But overall, I felt like it was fairly stable in the air. It was really responsive, and this is just on the stock settings, so I didn't change the rates or the PIDs or anything like that. This is pretty much directly how it came straight out of the box. Now, when flying it around, it definitely felt like you could hit flat sticks. I think I'm flat stick right here, and this is a fairly big hill, or a bit of the side of a cliff actually, so it climbed fairly nicely. But it was a little bit heavier. You definitely noticed that little bit of extra weight when you came down and really tried to punch out of, I guess, the end of the dive or something. I like that shot actually there. That was really cool. Now, for general racing, you'd probably struggle a little bit, because I think there's definitely some lighter builds out there, and this thing's just the weight would let it down a little bit, and also on the Betaflight tune. But in saying that, I don't think this is really aimed at those high-level sort of races. I think this is really aimed at just people who want to get a decent quad, they know it's going to work, and they want something that's really easy to set up, and I guess with some high-quality components in here. That's really where I think that this quad shines. Now, you will see some wobbles when you're flying around, and it was very, very windy, but that is also because it's rocking clean flight. And even though it had a pretty good tune, I can't stress this so much. So if you do get one of these, it's not too hard to flash Betaflight on here, and there's a bit of a guide in the manual anyway, and it shows you where the boot pins are. But just put Betaflight on here, because it will probably eliminate, I'm going to say 90%, because it was very, very windy here, but normally it will eliminate most of your oscillations straight off the bat, or if you just start rocking Betaflight. Now here you can see this is using the FPV cam, and don't worry, all that stuff in front, that's because I had to make a bit of a custom GoPro mount, because I currently don't have the GoPro mount that goes on this thing, so I really do wish they'd change that on. And you can see the OSD on there as well, but in saying that, I had my DVR recorder set up to NTSC, so you can't actually see the parts that are displayed down the bottom, like your voltage and your timer and those sorts of things. So the OSD does have those in there, and you can see it's flashing up low volts there, but if I had this set up on PAL, I'd be able to show you that. So that was a bit of a boo-boo on my behalf right there. And you can see the colors look really vibrant using the CMOS camera, but you do lose a bit of detail, I guess, when it goes into the sun or anything like that. It can be a little bit sketchy. And you can see just here, you get a little bit of a heads-up display when you land. It tells you your flight time. None of those other stats really do anything just there. That's sort of you just the flight time. Oh, there's my dog. Hey, Charlie. So there it is, there's my review of the 250 Shuriken from Holybro, and I gotta say, there are some things I'd like to change on this quad, but probably the thing I think I like the most about it is that this thing just works. You take it out of the box, it is so easy. I've never had a quad so simple to set up. You take it out of the box and it works in like 10 minutes. So I really think there's gonna be a lot of people out there who will appreciate being able to do that, or they might not have the confidence to build some of their own. They just want something that they can buy and it's going to work. So I definitely think that this is gonna be the quad for them. I'm going to leave you guys with the rest of this flight footage, so this thing zipping around the beach, but subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying!